Welcome everyone to the Gawler Business and Economic Development Committee meeting. I am your chair tonight, Laura Hodgson, and I declare this meeting open at 7:01. To commence, I would like to first acknowledge that this land we meet on today is the traditional lands of the Kaurna people and that we respect their spiritual relationship with their country. We also acknowledge the Kaurna people as the custodians of the Greater Adelaide region, and their cultural and heritage beliefs are still important to the living Kaurna people today. The second item on our agenda is our attendance record. So we have apologies this evening from our chair, Anthony Hunnett, and I am standing in for him this evening as the deputy presiding member, Shane Bailey, and also Stuart McDonald. We have no motions to grant leaves of absence or leaves of absence, and no non-attendance this evening. Does anyone have any declarations of interest they'd like to declare tonight? Oh, okay, thank you. No declarations noted. And the next item is a confirmation of minutes, that the minutes of the Gawler Business and Economic Development Committee meeting held on the 13th of April 2026 be confirmed as a true and correct record. Do I have a mover for that?
Yep, I can move those.
Thanks, Crystal. And a seconder?
Second.
Thank you, Alex. And all in favour? All in favour, thank you. There is no business arising from the minutes, and we have one decision report to discuss tonight, item 6. For this item, we have a presentation from staff that has been prepared, and also an attachment of a draft economic development framework which has been prepared by council. I would like to suggest that we move into an informal component of the meeting to allow us to discuss the presentation that staff are going to provide in a more informal manner. I'd like to remind you that live streaming will continue. We are not in confidence. It will still be an open meeting, but it will just allow us to be able to ask questions directly of staff. And it is required that we waive standing orders, and I just need a 2/3 majority to do that. So is everyone happy for us to waive standing orders? Yes, wonderful, thank you. So I will declare that we've waived standing orders at 7:03 p.m, and I will hand now. Thank you.
Yep, it's working. Thank you. Thank you to the chair. I should be less formal now because we've waived standing orders. Okay, so I'll walk you through this. This is just some thoughts that we had in the last week or so as we prepared the agenda. I'll do it fairly flexibly, so if there are anything that either Suman or Bryce want to add to the presentation, feel free. Okay, so this is a little bit of a cook's tour, I guess, of the agenda report and I guess the basis of the economic development framework. So I think someone asked, probably at the last meeting I think it was, about why we're doing a new economic development strategy or framework, and the answer is because we're required to do so. The tourism plan is out of date, as is the economic development strategy itself. I mentioned the Bentley's review not because it's a public document, but because essentially it drove the need to create a reference group to look at how money was spent by partly by Business Gawler, but also to look at how we deliver things on the ground. And those are sort of connected issues, if you like. But when you're looking at the actions at the back of the document, it's really about accountability and being clear on what the key themes or pillars are and the actions that go underneath it. So that's what explains why you've got the pillars and actions that you have. Our acting chair was part of that reference group, but I think the councillors were as well. Oh no, the RDA was, but you weren't. Yeah, sorry, before you came on board. Yeah, and we had BG as well. So we had, I guess, the major players in terms of economic development delivery on that group. And we tabled the report with council back in December, which included, I guess, what you see before you at the back of the document. As you know, in December of 2025, there was a resolution to end the funding of Business Gawler from a council perspective under the separate rate. And as you know, this is the Section 41 committee, and it met April was the first meeting, and here we are now. So that's kind of a bit of a time snapshot. The council decided in December that the actions and the pillars and the other priorities were,
So sorry, I don't know what I've done.
that were tabled were basically fine to progress further, and delegated the CEO to make minor and technical changes, and that's why I haven't really modified anything that's before you. But I did note, and I think in the updated version we sent to you, we did address clause 312 to clarify, as per the resolution, the intent of council at the time. So the framework itself is to refresh council's economic priorities. I think I don't need to read everything that's on here, but I think that there is a need for us to look at it being a work plan for a period of time. It is a framework. I think there's so many things that will happen over the next couple of years, probably the next 2 years, that for us being definitive as it's being a 5-year plan is probably a little bit misleading. And whilst that was the intent late last year, I think the world's changed a little bit in terms of whether it be Gawler, the Northern Parklands, or other projects. And that's why I think we look at this as a flexible plan that you know, the committee itself will have a view on in terms of priorities and things it wants to deliver. There are things that will go to RDA and discuss as well, and there'll be things that get developed in other ways. So I guess I'm emphasising flexibility. In terms of what those changes are, I've already touched on that. So we know that we had the current strategy, which is out of date. We see this as a framework rather than as a strategy. So it doesn't get down to who does the resourcing. It doesn't get specific as to which is the first priority. It just lists under pillars what those priorities or actions could be. And I think there is a need for a bottom-up, data-driven strategy, which is at least a 5 to 10 year document, which is the next phase, probably in 2028, subject to council funding capacity. You're familiar with where these growth areas are, but in case you're not, in the south, you've got Gawler, which is up to about 15,000 dwellings. The Northern Parklands is evolving even before us at the moment in terms of what it will be, sports hub, potential... No, I'm okay still. All right, I thought it dropped out. The town centre structure plan, as you're aware, which will be going to council in May, and Concordia, which has been rezoned, and you've got the infrastructure scheme in place. So all these things will bring significant change. Some of it we can foreshadow, some of it we can't. The document itself, in terms of how it's set up, is a vision statement, as you'll notice. Pillars, there's 4 of them. There are focus areas, objectives, and strategies. We'll call them actions. I thought I'd share a little bit of information that's actually in the document itself, and it talks about escape expenditure, amongst other things. It talks about domestic spend. I don't need to read that out to you, I don't think, in detail, but you can see where the escape expenditure, for example, is going. And it's largely in the categories of department store retail, but there's obviously a lot of dining, entertainment and travel. You know, in recent meetings we've talked about night economy and other things. Clearly there are gaps and opportunities as well. And you can see where the current domestic spend is too, which is groceries, day-to-day items, which is not surprising when you've got as many supermarkets and local activity opportunities as we do. In terms of, I guess, the findings of the document, we've said already in the document that it's an area central to growth. So you've got Roseworthy, which we didn't even show in the previous slide, but Roseworthy is even bigger than Concordia and Gawler. They're talking like 30,000 dwellings over a period of time. We know about Concordia and other opportunities. We also know about health and aged care service investments occurred, childcare, early years learning. There's been major investment in the private education sector, but as you know from the election, there's the announcement of the technical college at some point in the near future. And there are some benefits still in terms of being in Gawler relative to being in Metro Adelaide in terms of just affordability. So those things are attractors. And we know the major employers are business employment and support services. Opportunities, I won't go through that, but we've had this discussion in previous months. We'll get back onto that later. This is me getting a bit photo happy, if you like, but I guess in the economic development framework, we talk about entertainment and experience retail. I know, 35, 40 years ago when I was a teenager, we were talking about Battle of the Bands and those sorts of opportunities and linking that to hotels and I guess that meeting a need for a different demographic rather than just those who are going to hotels for a drink. Fashion accessories. We talk about fine food and dining, local product, home opportunities, employment precincts. There's certainly a lack of employment precinct opportunity in Gawler with largely the development of Williston and not much in terms of vacant land. And these are all things talked about in the EDF. One thing I thought I would talk about is just the budget itself, just so you know where you stand. The separate rate will be confirmed as part of the budget process itself, and that budget, the current budget, is out for consultation. It isn't now; it soon will be. Do you know? Just asking Helen, when was the closing date for comment on the budget? Do you recall? 29th. That's probably in here. Sorry, I should have looked at this carefully. 29th of May. Oh, that's there anyway. Yeah. So you can see in there that there's a window. So if there are things that come out of, for example, the discussions tonight that you think require further consideration in terms of priorities for the committee, potentially that's something you might put a submission in on. Alternatively, we'll go to the June meeting and we'll talk about priorities as largely set out in the economic development framework. I guess from here, what I'm foreshadowing, it's in the agenda report, is that we will provide up until, say, 25th of May, that's just an indicative date, to get some feedback from the committee. You don't have to make decisions tonight as to what priorities you have, but I would like to get this report, the framework, to Council for adoption in June. If you think there are things which are vague or ambiguous or should be restated in a different way, or if in fact you think there are gaps, I don't have a problem putting that in the draft, and then we'll put that to Council. So I think that largely concludes the presentation, unless either Bryce or Sumit have anything you want to add to the PowerPoint? No. All right, over to you.
Thank you very much, Andrew. We'll now open the floor for informal discussion. Does anyone have any initial comments or questions?
You're going to move in a second.
Oh.
Move back into
Move back in. Are we wanting to move back into session now?
If everyone's finished with...
Yeah, is everyone happy that they've not got any informal questions initially for Andrew? We're happy to move back in.
I have a question.
Oh, you have a question?
Yes, please. Andrew, can you show on the map at the beginning where the intended business land in Cuddler might be?
Yeah, sure. Sorry, I might have closed down the PowerPoint in my enthusiasm with the buttons.
So I obviously have a little bit of prior knowledge, but it was one thing that wasn't clear in the report about where we might be imagining that to be.
Okay, yeah, this is probably the map we want.
That's the one, thank you.
There are different trains of thought with that, and as Councillor Hennessy knows, when we worked on the southern rural area, we toyed with the idea of something on the edge of Main North Road in the south. But when you look at the work that's been done by state government on the Cuddler structure plan, at a very high level, there was some thoughts that maybe it would be further to the west, closer to the Sturt Highway or the Northern Expressway. I guess it's too early to really know which way the consultants will go in terms of employment precincts. Yeah, service industry, so it's kind of potentially there can be homemaker centre type things, or it could be more light industrial. But I mean, certainly if you look at Williston, a lot of that's light industrial. So employment lands cover a multitude of things. Back in the day when we were debating the merit or otherwise of, say, Bunnings, that's an employment land scenario, bulky goods. So there's no right or wrong as to where they go, but I guess the question is where it goes and how big it's going to be. Our thinking at the moment is you probably need at least 50 hectares of land. I think there's some analysis in the document as to how big Williston is, but I think the total employment land we have at the moment might be in the order of 38 hectares, of which is 2 or 3 hectares is vacant, virtually nothing. The bits we have that are vacant are relatively small fragmented parcels. But yeah, whether it's actually near the Northern Expressway or whether it's on Main North Road is a good question. You could argue, as some do, that it shouldn't be on Main North Road at all because of our goal of trying to green up the road coming in. That's a valid argument. Equally, we've had industrial employment land type activities near Tiver Road and further south for 40, 50 years, ever since amalgamations and boundary reform. So it's too early to say where it's going to be, but somewhere in that area. Yep. Boundary reform? Minor changes. You got to turn the speaker on. Sorry, for the live stream. Oh, we are, but it's still live streamed.
For those playing at home.
Yep.
Because it seems to me that if there is more light industrial, it should be closer to the highway, the expressway, where basically they can get easier access to markets. And I know that there was a small portion of land that was going to be, was pitched to be kind of, pulled away from Playford, which would make sense. It just closes up the triangle, and that seems to be an ideal spot for that, basically.
The changes that were made in terms of boundary reform were relatively incidental. There were no substantial changes, and certainly the big structural changes, whether it be Roseworthy or it was more Concordia, and similar, didn't get up. So we're talking about administrative changes only, nothing of any strategic consequence.
Yeah, so nothing really happened because it was in the sort of west corner. It was like a tiny little parcel that was just going.
No, there's some very minor changes on those boundaries, but nothing that would be relevant to what you're talking about.
In terms of opening up that.
At the end of the day, the structure plan itself in Gawler will look at all the lands as per the agreed boundary reforms. So nothing's off the table, but we don't know exactly yet where those precincts are going to be.
And we in control of that at all, really?
It's actually state government driven, the structure plan, but council will be a key player in terms of having input into it. Yeah. But they only announced the consultants literally in the last 4 weeks. So we're probably still 12 to 18 months away from having a full structure plan for Gawler.
My other question was just to, as part of the discussion, was to raise the fact that we have specifically said we won't go out for community engagement, and I'm actually quite comfortable with the reasoning given, but that actually may provoke some response from the community. So I'd just bring it to the rest of the committee's attention that that's a slightly non-normal procedure, but again, I think the explanation here, and given the timeline and the two-year span of this one, is I'm comfortable with that, but it is unusual.
I think you're right. We sort of argue backwards and forwards, even internally, about what do you do in this situation. I think when you've had a working group develop up with all the key players on it, how do you meaningfully go to the community and say, what do you want, when you've kind of already decided what the pillars and actions are going to be? You've got that specific. I think that's where, to be genuine in the community, you need to give them a chance to scope out everything, and that's why a full strategy is the way to do that.
And the other point was, I'm actually pretty comfortable because the original plans predate this council. So they are very, in terms of local government years, they're very old. So I'm quite comfortable, and I really do like the change from a strategy into a framework. I think there's the logic there. But I'm comfortable.
Yeah, thank you.
Does anyone else? Oh, you have another question, Alex?
I mean, this is the end of the meeting, if not, right? So.
Oh, well, there's additional items and we're able to then discuss further if need be, and also this is the informal portion. questions before we then discuss any feedback.
I mean, I had some thoughts and feelings about it, but I'm not too sure in what medium do you want to hear it. But I might have to give it to you in sort of an email form because I've seemed to have lost my mind.
Well, I can foreshadow.
Yeah.
There's one point at which we talk about that we're situated as a gateway between metropolitan Adelaide and the Barossa region. It's not only the Barossa region. We now have evidence that we are servicing, good hard evidence, servicing the Mid-North and Yorke Peninsula. I think we need to move away from the old adage of being the gateway to the Barossa to being a slightly broader area, and certainly in terms of many of the medical aligned businesses, they have got statistical evidence that, you know, that's where their clients are coming from. So I think we just need to broaden that, so I certainly will put that in. We've also got the Education Department here in Gawler, as well as Child Protection and their Services SA. And just as an aside, I guess in terms of talking about the employment lands, at some point I think we should have a discussion as to why one of the employment lands is not working. All agreeing. Because that is a very large area and it was brought into line after quite a lengthy community discussion. I think it ended up in court, and it's not meeting, or the perception could be that it's not meeting what it was designed to be. I'm not sure if that's the purview of this committee. Andrew, I'd be interested to hear comments.
Fair question. Are you referring to Gawler Green or Evanston Park? The actual estate that's got the new, you know, it's got the pet shop and all those.
That one, yeah.
Sully's. What is it
I
called?
know what you're talking about.
Sully's or
That's it.
whatever
Yeah,
it is.
yeah.
Silly Sully's. I think. Well, I guess the comment on that one, there's a range of opinions as to why it's got the vacancies that it has, and I won't go into that in detail because it's just second-hand feedback. But there has been a legal matter before SCAP for a period of time about a supermarket going in there. So whether that's tactically part of this or not, I don't know, but it would have occupied several of those premises. And there's a question of interpretation of whether or not that's allowed under the PDI Act. Council's view was it wasn't appropriate to have a supermarket in there, that it was a homemaker type centre, and so we contested it. SCAP had the same view, they refused it, and then it got appealed, and I have absolutely no idea what's happened since then in terms of the appeal, but maybe take that on notice as to what the status of it is. But I guess our view is that there are a range of reasons places are vacant. It could be tax related, it could be because they're speculating on other things they want to do. Various times I noticed I think it was the ECDEV strategy itself, it was relatively well occupied for a period of time. So it seems to go in waves as to that precinct. Yeah.
I guess it unaligns. We can assign land in a planning sense. Doesn't necessarily mean they are successful in what we hope they would be, is I guess the underlying
Dead
point.
right. It comes down to management.
Yeah.
Can I just speak to that quickly? Having first-hand experience in one of the smaller outlets, we did actually try to commercially lease a space in there before we landed where we were. It was actually the owners of that property that we ran into huge difficulties with. And speaking again through first-hand, I wouldn't say it's a conflict of interest because it's not a discussion item, but again, it comes straight down to people that own that commercial space. I did not run into one road bump, nor do I know any of the current business owners who are family members of mine have run into a road bump with council. It's been the actual commercial owners of that precinct. Yeah.
I don't think that's an uncommon experience around the whole town, is it?
Yeah,
So,
but it does.
just a reality.
There are businesses in there though that have been long-standing businesses that are suffering as a result of having vacant buildings in there. So it is definitely worth noting and addressing.
Yeah.
On vacant property, this is something that's also come up in the Town Structure Plan Community and Business Reference Group discussions, and there are programs and things in place not in town of Gawler, but elsewhere, that can be used to incentivise landlords to potentially be more friendly towards tenants, sometimes if it is due to taxation decisions and land banking and holding land for other purposes until a period of time, there's not much that can be done, but potentially through the town structure plan there has been interest from the community reference group to look at, for the town centre at least, how we can better incentivise landlords so there are less vacancies as well. I'm not sure if Andrew Bryce or someone you would like to speak to that as well.
I guess one of the things I was thinking of, okay, albeit in a different state, was that when you had vacant commercial land, councils had policies sometimes of doubling the effective rates on that land, so you just couldn't hang on to the land and not develop it. But I guess the next step from there is you can have it developed and still have it unoccupied, which we've talked about already. And I think there is a challenge there. In the business community, they'll say, well, you know, it's up to me as to who I put in there and when I put them in there. I'll put the capital into, you know, acquiring the property. Alternatively, there's the other argument, which is that it doesn't suit anyone's needs to have properties vacant for 5 or 10 years either. So I guess there's no neat answer to that question. I think it's something we need to work through further.
I raise it simply because I know the community sees it. That's, you know, that it's just very obvious, that's all.
Yep, agreed.
Question, just regarding the committee's terms of reference role and feedback in relation to the framework. Are you wanting the committee to be focused on initiatives that are within the town centre based on where the levy is coming from currently, or are we thinking more broadly than that, and is the mandate broader than that?
It's across the whole of Gawler.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking employment lands, we're talking Gawler, which is nowhere near the town centre. I think that we need to be looking, pardon me, we need to be looking at the needs of the community as a whole. So, yeah.
To that, what, in terms of our feedback, is there specific feedback or specific items that you want us to look at in particular? Is there certain, because yes, I have this impulse to go ideas, but you already really have nutted that out, really. What you really want is, I guess, something a bit more nuanced.
Well, I think there's two different issues here. There's the issue of what your priorities might be in June, which we'll talk about obviously in June, but start thinking now about those in terms of priorities for the new financial year, which will be informed by the action plan. And there might be 3, 5, 10 different things there you wish to progress. And obviously it's resource dependent, but we'll throw as much resource as we reasonably can to deliver what you ask us to do. But as I said, you know, there's probably a few things. The world's changed a fair bit even since it went to council back in December of last year. One thing I was just talking before we went on camera was about maybe a clarification statement for Pillar 1, which says that, you know, we want to see this as a live document that in real time is a digital document that we can modify and change. So if the committee has a view that there are additional priorities, subject obviously to council ratifying that when they endorse the minutes, I don't have a problem with that. So rather than having as locked in set of work initiatives for 2 years, if you think, oh no, that's just not right anymore, we need to add this to the list and take something off, that's perfectly fine. So I mentioned that. One of the other things I was just toying with is, and some of you in this group are in the group for the town centre, but you know, we're talking about investment prospectuses, which are required for the town centre, but that investment prospectus doesn't deal with the whole of Gawler. So if there's a conversation about a separate additional piece of work being required, which I think there is a need for, you may flag or think about whether that's required, and perhaps the role of this committee to think about that as well, you know, in terms of local employment, what perhaps should happen when we're looking at Gawler, because that'll have a town centre of its own. You know, we have existing commercial zoned areas in Gawler, one down near the Evanston Gardens Primary School, which is a triangle on that corner there, which is commercially zoned. Rumour has it there's some interest in activating that land for commercial purposes, but there are commercial zoned land throughout Gawler which could get developed, and it'd be interesting to get your perspective as to what you think opportunities and things we should look at as a council in those spaces, so we can work with the landowners. So I'd add that one. On top of that, what else would I say? I think there's probably in the event space, I mean, we talked about it before, and there's events in the document that are referred to. It's in section 3.3. There's nothing wrong with what's in there at the moment. It's perfectly fine. But given the suggestion that we model the economic effect of events over maybe the last couple of years, there could be a bit of a win there, indicating that you're going to look at that and give feedback to council as to the types of events that give bang for buck, return on investment.
Yeah.
So that's not foreshadowed in here, but I think it could be if that's what you want to look at. So I'm not saying these are things you should put in there, but there are things you should think about.
Yeah, I think that would be excellent, because when we do our activation budget from council, we have in the past haven't looked at it through that lens. It's been more about bringing people to Gawler, not bringing people to Gawler and encouraging them to spend money. And I think those can be quite different events. So again, using the information we have to see where they align will help us then go this one rather than this one.
So on spend, the visitor spend versus the resident spend, and reducing that escape spend and looking at those key categories of escape spend and where that's going to, and also thinking about the future population of Gawler. We have a bit of an idea of what that might look like based on the housing that's being built in the new areas and who that will attract. The projections in terms of ages and schooling requirements and health system requirements because of the demographics coming in. So thinking about, well, what kind of events, experiences cater for them so that they do see Gawler as a place they want to live as well. So in addition to that investment attraction of businesses, thinking about being a desirable place for families to come live as well, and thinking about, okay, we understand, I'm really keen for a second to understand where that spend is occurring, but okay, how do we want the future spend to look as well? Like, what do our ambitions want to be as a council and as a broader region, and who do we want to be and how do we want to be selling ourselves to those people as well? Because I think we've got great heritage assets at the moment, and that appeals to a particular demographic, and it makes for a beautiful main street potentially, but it doesn't necessarily give people moving in the experiences and the things that they want to live with. So there's the opportunity around a master plan Cuddler for that to happen and for that to be influenced, but also the rest of Gawler, what is it missing as well? That's something I'm really keen for us to think of when we're thinking about these priorities and what we might do to achieve these as well.
Sorry, you go.
What is the point in council having a kind of an idea of what things should go where if they don't necessarily have any influence on the people who will, the private money that will put the money in that spend? And I noticed I think I found my notes, but I found that the action plan was lacking in action. Actually, I felt like it was an action plan that was about rehashing more reports and didn't have a lot of action in it. And maybe that's government and that's how it is. But I wonder if we're going to convert these ideas and these ambitious kind of ideas of what it could be, we also need to couple that with a dedicated delegation of thinkers of Gawler, and not just council people, but perhaps entrepreneurs or even the big old money in town people who are sitting on real estate, whatever, being part of a delegation, be part of like brand Gawler, identity Gawler, and going out to every economic forum there is in the state or the country, and actually representing ourselves as a block, it just feels like, I feel like there's a gap missing. You can obviously have like a grand plan and say we're looking for this kind of investment here, but at the end of the day, what I've just heard from in terms of like the Homemaker Centre, it's like is the business community listening? Is the private money, the investor class listening? Do they even know the opportunities? there's obviously, there's a lot in that.
There's a
sorry.
few things in there.
Yeah.
I'll try and dig through a couple of them. In terms of the thinkers, well, that's you guys. That's why we put you on the committee.
Yeah.
One of the things I was thinking about was we talked about night economy, I think, previously. So we've got a guest speak. I think it's June or July. Yeah, so we've got someone coming in to talk about that in terms of the hotel scene and what's happening there. So I think that could be a conversation about what is that ecosystem, if you like, of the night economy, and there are people in this room with expertise and we'll bounce ideas off each other.
Yeah.
So I think that's a start of that, because these weren't conversations probably being had previously.
Yeah.
On the question you mentioned before about, well, because we can't control how people spend money, what's the point planning? Which I'm trying to not try to oversimplify what you said, but I think that's what you kind of said.
Can I interject? But I think when you said that what we want to create is kind of like, what's it called, in this case,
Investment prospectus. Yep.
Right. That's what you're ultimately having to, and then that's your kind
Yep.
of,
Correct.
that's your, your elevator pitch everywhere
Well, that's
you go,
your
effectively,
brand.
right?
That's what you're trying to
that's right.
achieve. Yeah.
And that's what we're trying to achieve.
Yeah.
But then who is the crack squad that's going to go out there and actually do the hard work?
Us.
Right.
Us, and there's
And probably
also,
you
this
guys
is a
as well.
role, this is a role
we're
that's
all
in
part
our,
of it.
this is a role with Regional Development
Yeah.
Australia as well. We
Yeah.
do it for the region,
Right.
and
Yeah.
one of the things is often this happens in quiet conversations,
Mm.
and it's about, not just about getting the money into the region and the good stuff will follow, but showing what we've got and where we're heading. And for example, this framework, the town structure plan, are really good lead-ins to show Gawler is open for
Yes.
investment. We are wanting inputs. So that's the start, and a lot of it does happen in quiet conversations, and it's just, oh, you should meet this person has this land available, and then they start talking, and 5 years later there's something there. Sometimes it happens quite slowly, sometimes it happens faster as well.
I think sometimes these are all questions of time and place. I think 4 or 5 years ago we were talking about single detached dwellings being the only sort of housing we deliver in Gawler. And in recent times, this is an example, we've had 45 units built next to the train station, and we've got several other models being looked at for medium density housing in the area, which just goes back to the question of affordability and providing choice, and the market's responding accordingly. It's responding accordingly, but it's also getting support at a staff level. It's a combination of those two things together that make these things possible, because if you don't have staff support to make it a relatively painless process, and if you don't have the messaging going out and developers coming to council saying, well, what can we do? No one gets anything. Nothing happens. When it comes to things like employment precincts, I'll get specific. When we're talking about that, unless you've got the land zoned the right way, unless you've got the infrastructure in place, unless there are agreements in place, no one can ever develop. The issue of whether or not there's vacancies for a period of time or not, yes, you're right, that's something we can't control, but we can certainly shape where that investment goes, and then it's up to the individual landowner to work out how to make the best of it.
And I agree with that, and I think it's, we've got to get the foundation right. We've got to have that prospectus. We've got to have this framework put together, and I love that. But I do think we need to be really seriously thinking about the conversations we're going to be having, like the action. How do we get, in the room with people who have money, who are interested, who are like looking for an investment opportunity?
But there are micro conversations here which probably are more specific than what's even in the action plan. So I was thinking of Crystal the other day when it came to the action plan. One thing we might need to do, but we haven't done, is actually properly door knock all the businesses in the main street, or maybe it's broader, just to look at what is the quality and level of their online presence, for example.
Shane would be a perfect...
And maybe Shane, I was thinking of Shane as well in that conversation, but we've all talked about these things. So it's one thing to provide mentoring support, and we're rolling out that program, as you know, and Bryce or Simon can probably update you on the interest in that, which is significant. But there'll be heaps of businesses that don't go for mentoring, but who probably have a poor presence online or could do more online.
And that's pillar 4, right? So that's...
Yeah, so I think, that they may not be things that specifically in this, but these are things that you could put in your priorities for 26, 27. Or you could put them in here as well, whichever. I'm not too fussed either way. But in terms of delivering on the ground, that's how you make businesses more successful. That's how you actually get investment to occur. even things like, the vacant shop fronts and allowing month-to-month rental for people with, arts and craft type businesses. I mean, yes, everyone talked about Renew Newcastle as, the saviour of everything, and it's not. But if we had a register identifying who was actually interested in actually being in a shop front for a month trial, then you can start to have a conversation about whether council will wear, some insurance costs to help someone, via this committee be in that space. So these are the sort of conversations via workshops and evolving thinking you can actually make a difference with.
I also, I feel being like, operations in a business and being a creative and stuff like that, I think sometimes it hasn't even been 30 days since we've officially formally met as a committee. You've already worked on that new branding, you've already had your business engagement forum, you've already had lots of interest. So I spoke at our very first meeting, return on investment for me is key. And I think we spoke about marketing, we spoke about branding, their issues that have already started coming to fruition. So let's not forget, yes, we are talking about changing from strategic plans to frameworks, and there is a lot of talk about what we're going to do and what we should be doing, but we are actually still in the background slowly starting to achieve things. It doesn't feel like, I get it doesn't feel like we are, but even just having that chat about Gawler Park. So my quick ROIs for moving forward, whether it be it's June, it's the end of the financial year. Again, I'm new to this whole council committee thing, but I feel like already I have a better idea and a better relationship and understanding of council members and what council's role is and why it didn't work last time with Business Gawler. So if I feel like I'm getting that understanding, then members of our community are slowly going to be able to get that understanding. So Gawler Park, for example, the Evanston Garden markets that occur in a parking lot, right, with no other surrounding businesses. So why can't we move that to a Gawler Park car park? Is that council land, that car park in there, or is that privately owned?
Primary school park.
No. The Gawler Park, where your silly sollies and your gyms and your paint shops.
Gawler Park is privately owned.
Yeah, so even that car park in there?
That's education, isn't it? Which car park?
No, I'm sorry, I'm talking about Gawler Park. So where you've got your silly sollies, like what Helen spoke about before. So the actual car parking in there.
That belongs to each of the tenants.
Yeah. So when you say each of the tenants in there, so the ones that are currently...
Sorry, the owners of those titles.
The owners of those titles, yeah. So if we wanted to, say, move a market from, say, an Evanston Gardens facility, there would be pushback because that's private land. That would be difficult to do.
It's potentially doable if you had an agreement from the owners.
The owners,
and you had the appropriate insurances in place.
Yeah. So, for example, where it's really hard to park in that Evanston Gardens library car park because there's stuff being held. But a bigger private space that would actually benefit all the surrounding businesses that are already getting some decent foot traffic on weekends. You could drive people to stay in that one spot.
But the other part of that, where council could assist, would be that you need to have a land use permit for the land as well. So if you identify this as a regular occurrence, so on a Sunday, for example, or whatever, when it's relatively quiet down there, provided there's an approval in place, then absolutely.
Yeah. I know a few of Shane's comments about food trucks and their locations and stuff like that. I don't understand why we can't. I have a food business. I understand the competition, but competition breeds competition. If I had a meal prep shop open right up next door to me, I'd love it. All right, because you're drawing people in for the same thing. It's like when you go to two cafes and one's dead and one's busy. You always want to go have a look in the busy one because why are they in there and not in there? What I'm saying is. What quick return on investments can we have? So if there's this dead space and these issues with food trucks sprawled out around different businesses in Gawler, can we,
You could. That could be exactly the sort of thing you might prioritise and say, let's create an opportunity for a market there. Or could a market be in Todd Street at our car park down there on a Sunday, for example, or somewhere else?
Yeah, and just initiating these conversations, knowing what we can and can't do in what areas of Gawler. I think that's something like I said, I only know what I know, don't know that. But they were just some points that I wrote down.
I mean, at the moment we have the Makers Market that's inside this building and it seems to work fine. But you could potentially have a Makers Market that was both, weather dependent, inside and outside.
Yeah.
And if it went outside as well, which areas would it go in? So,
yes.
That kind of thing.
One of the most successful nighttime economy initiatives in Australia has been some nighttime markets at
Yeah.
Ramadan time in, I think, the western suburbs of Sydney. I can't remember the council, but they've been incredibly successful. So, and again, like for the demographic of that region, something unique. The City of Adelaide has nighttime markets regularly at different times a year, leading up to Christmas, and also I believe in the winter months as well still. So thinking about, and how could potentially we combine two things? Maybe we don't currently have nighttime markets, I don't think, not since I've been here. I'm not even sure around Christmas carols or anything if we do. So thinking about,
We do, yeah.
we do it at the Christmas carols themselves, but the other weeks leading up to Christmas, so thinking about how we could potentially combine things and, bold idea, but close the main street for one Friday a month from November through December, January, for one Friday night. Late markets.
I mean,
Why not? We do it for Fringe in the City.
there's always a risk when you compare places from different states, let alone in the same state. But the example I always gave was back in Bacchus Marsh, where I used to work, in Victoria, near Melton. They had the Strawberry and Cherries Festival, and that was a weekend activity. And on, I'm pretty sure both days, they actually closed down the main street, and the hotels, there were several of them, just like here, and they'd bring out outdoor dining out onto the road itself. And the place continued to tick along. You just didn't have right traffic management, but it was a significant boost to the whole community, and that was the brand of Bacchus Marsh. It's an irrigation district, it's strawberries and cherries. We don't have anything comparable to that, but I think something to think about what you are and how you can deliver it, and actually people go, wow, there's actually community building activities occurring here. I think that's something that's worth talking about. The other thing I was just thinking of too was something that Bryce mentioned to me probably a couple of weeks ago. When looking at the action plan, I guess the story with this is that economic investment and initiatives, it's not just a case of what we're doing in here and what RDA might do and so on. There's a lot of other ways we go about it. So whether it be the town centre structure plan, or whether it be the activation strategy, albeit you can argue about which events, but I think there are plenty of other levers we've got which are important to the issue of how we get investment to occur. So have a think about it as sort of a multi-string puppet, if you like, and there's always different strings as to how we can achieve that investment, and it's just how we tweak, I guess, those mechanisms.
Can I just comment back, Crystal? I'm not criticising what we've achieved so far. I'm also not criticising the ambition and enthusiasm that we have and the capability. What I'm I guess looking forward is that we don't get bogged down in ideas. Ideas are cheap and easy.
Actually,
And
getting a return on investment.
not to mention, we've got way more ideas than time, and we're going to get bogged down in a whole bunch of lovely ideas. In fact, we might even be feeling attached to our ideas and competing when we need to prioritise potentially even just your idea there, which is actually kind of remind me of a similar idea I had, which was about bringing the auction market back into the town where it used to be. It used to be where Coles is, Northern Coles is. That used to be an auction square where people would come and do live produce auctions. And then that got moved out to Gawler Park down on Main North Road. And it's just like, well, so that business is, all the traffic that it brings in is obviously not supporting anyone out there in the middle of nowhere. That's exactly what you're saying. These ideas, even just trying to target that and picking up the phone and having those conversations is going to be an epic project in itself. It might take a quarter of a year just to get the 3 people in the room to have coffee. And so I'm really curious about, like, I feel honestly that as committee, you've got the right mix of people in this committee who are passionate and care about this community, care about Gawler, and also quite entrepreneurial. But we are also running our own businesses, and Absolutely. It's not realistic that we can really project manage these opportunities.
But you don't need to.
No.
I mean, that's what you got staff for.
Who's the staff?
Us.
Right. Good. Excellent. So that's what I mean to say. How do I get you as staff actually picking it? Like, how do we encourage, or how do we see you enact an actual, actual action.
We'll give you
on the
the data and we'll give you the narrative and you'll make the priority decisions.
Yeah.
And then I would suggest there's probably 30 to 50 actions in here.
Yeah.
Identify the 5 to 10 you think are the most important, that you think are realistic.
Yeah.
And then that becomes your priorities for 26, 27. That's where you put your budget and your effort. Because it may be you need more resources than Sum and me and a bit of Bryce.
Yeah.
It might be you need other support. You know, we're all doing multitask at the same time, so a bit of Bryce is a lot of someone else.
Yeah.
But the point is, we just need to be realistic as to what we can achieve. Under promise, over deliver.
Yes.
But I don't want to be the other way around where we say we're going to solve everyone's problems and we do nothing.
Yeah, so that's what I was getting at, is how do we convert the ideas?
But I mean, if you drill down though, I mean, someone was talking before about employment precincts, it was Helen. Under 221A, it says, for example, develop an industry selection framework that identifies and prioritises target industries strategically matched to current and future employment lands. So whilst we don't know exactly where the precincts are going to be, we know what the gaps generally are. I used to have an economic development team which had, albeit 7 staff in a previous life, and they'd go out there targeting certain franchises that they'd go and say, we need to have you in our town.
Yeah.
And they'd go to them directly.
Right.
We used to, on the events side of things, we actually had a firm out there which we said, look, these are the types of things we want to have delivered in our town, whether it be national billiards competitions or other things where there was overnight stays.
Yeah.
Because unfortunately, well, fortunately for us, this is Hamilton, there was nowhere else to stay within an hour and a half drive. So you had to be in Hamilton if you went to that event.
Yeah.
So you got a captive audience. And it turns out we had a really good table tennis sporting facility as well, which may as well use. So events linked to the sporting infrastructure we had made sense as well. So I think they're the things we need to think about in terms of, if you want to target things, what are the sort of businesses you want to have? I think that's a piece of work you could do. If we get some guidance as to what you want us to focus on, we'll tell you whether we can do it or not.
See, I'm going to suggest that we do more promotion, because I think we have got some very successful businesses in town, and I have an interest in the Dualis rebirth, which has taken a coffee van and brought it into the business. I agree with your comments. Vans often are a stage along. But not a lot of people don't, because they're busy running their own businesses, my perception is sometimes they don't have the time to look around and see what else is working in the town. So I think part of the things is we should be promoting
Best practice,
best practice,
This actually,
innovation, whatever you call it.
also case studies as well. I mean, I think resource in terms of like promotion, I think part of that could actually be maybe even leveraging the Bunyip in some way to go to interview people like Katrina, who did petite hair, and her testimony about her relationship working with council and a can-do attitude of the council. So getting a case study on the ground, putting that on the website. So if there's someone who is who's thinking, gee, North is going gangbusters at the moment, maybe I should, and I'm looking for someone to put a restaurant, they can go on the website and there's the prospectus and also some testimonials about the business community as well, which gives a confidence to anyone doing a cursory lunch. So these are,
You've got virtually no videos that give a story about Gawler. I've been in other councils, and you've seen them as well, where you might have someone who's pitching, here's the education story as to why you need to move here. Or it might be, it may not be education, maybe it's, if you're a certain age demographic, some of the best health facilities. Whatever the story might be, there's a way of actually pitching that, but we just haven't pitched it.
I was wondering too, because we have the McLeod's Daughters.
25th anniversary is this year.
Now they would have. Did they? I didn't watch a lot of McLeod's Daughters, but did they do a lot of the shooting inside the town?
Some.
I mean, would it be possible to acquire some of that footage?
Well, we're actually talking about. Well, I'm not sure if Bryce, you want to talk about it. We've talked about it offline.
Because just before you go on, I feel like there's a massive opportunity for, we should have basically a selection reel or a goods reel, a show reel that sort of shows off the iconic locations in a really attractive cinematic form that's just accessible to anyone, so that if there is any future desire to shoot a location in South Australia, they might consider Gawler. But it also is a beautiful town. It's a beautiful way of showcasing the town on the website and whatnot as well. So.
Yeah, thanks. And I think that is a driver for not only the McLeod's Daughters initiative and celebration, but also what we did with the Gawler 3-day event in terms of trying to build up the story behind those events and what that can be into the future. Looking at the 3-day event and the opportunity to bring horse events on scale back to Gawler again, and using that as the catalyst to do those sorts of things. So I think both of those events are really trying to leverage that going forward and taking advantage of those opportunities to showcase that, whether that have been previous things that have occurred, but then showcase them how they could be reimagined or delivered in a different way in the future. So definitely.
But you're right, Alex, I can think of about 10 films that have been filmed in Gawler in various properties over a period of 30 years, mind you. But you're right, there's another angle that we never think to promote. So there's lots of different.
I mean, so I know that, you know, people, was it like Angels and Demons, the church that's in Scotland? You know, people can like travel in from all over the world just to go to this church. Is it just, and I've been there, my wife took me there.
Scotland has all of those travel by movie brochures.
Yeah.
You know, we go to this this place.
I mean, you know, I was just talking today, we were in Berlin, we went to Lennon Wall, and I thought it was, communist Lennon, but no, it was actually John Lennon, the John Lennon Wall. And it's just like, wow, I can't believe it. It's just a graffitied wall. It's just a graffitied wall, and yet you've got people going, oh, we must go see that.
It's not.
Yeah. So how do you create that?
It's not hard.
culture, that
It's not hard
heritage
when even the things we've been talking about. For example, if you connect the dots together, we talked about doing some economic modelling of events that have already occurred and which ones would have ongoing value.
Yeah.
If you look at 331B, develop a comprehensive venue and event space prospectus to proactively attract and secure a diverse calendar of events.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be hard to work out what sort of events you want to do if you know which ones give you the best return on investment. So if you do that bit of work, you know what's the next step, which is to promote the targeted areas.
Yeah.
But we've never done that.
And I think that would meet your thing about people interested in setting up markets. If we had a range of, here's the possibilities, both private and public lands, that might just go to people instead of, because there seems to be a bit of a vacuum at the moment, trying various things and not perhaps sometimes hitting it correctly. So.
And other things we've done too, which are probably a little bit outside this, but we've been speaking to RDA about key specific sites in and around the town where there's clearly opportunities for investment, whether it be tourist accommodation or other. So there are things happening offline which are about us actually being serious about doing stuff. And again, we haven't done that before.
Speaking to my role with RDA, we have the ability to do economic modelling to support things as well. So if there's something, I can give an example. We did. It's been recently announced the new Intercontinental Hotel coming into the Barossa. It recently, just last week, received state government planning approval. While RDA is agnostic to different hotel brands, we have the ability to provide that economic modelling that shows the jobs that would be created and the economic value that will come into the community for it, and that was used as part of their planning process. So we have the ability to do that based on different scenarios, and then also contacts within state government, so we can speak directly to different areas of the state government department or area within state development, Invest SA, speak to their tourism team to say, hey, we've got this bit of land that would be great for this. Do you have anyone interested in investing in something like that? Speak to their more manufacturing and industrial team. There's this industrial land available. What do you have? So they're the kind of the conversations that RDA and local councils will have more quietly based on specific cases as well. So if there is something that comes up, those conversations can be had to get the ball moving and understand if there is interest there too.
Another one which I think is relevant to the committee is 343, which is attract and support First Nations tourism experiences. Yes, we already have businesses that do native foods, for example, in Gawler. But more broadly in terms of tourism, you don't have to think too hard to look at where the opportunities are. So at Northern Parklands, for example, there are clearly strong elements in the brief for that project to do with Indigenous storytelling up and down Gawler River. we've got elements of it already in the town itself. I've always eyed off Goose Island and thought that's a great place potentially to do some sort of Indigenous garden or some sort of storytelling potentially. And it's always sort of fallen through the cracks a little bit, and Helen and I offline have had conversations about that over the years. But they're the things that other councils do. And it's something like that, yes, there are people who eye it off just for parking. It could be parking maybe, but I think you could do it more than that with that sort of land. Yes, it's flood prone, but perfect spot to do some sort of storytelling and have quiet spaces in the edge of the town in an area which was clearly really important to First Nations.
Well, it's also a natural amplificator. It's actually
Correct.
made for something like
Great
that.
performing spot
Yeah,
too.
brilliant. I mean, and it has been in the past for that reason. They have had a whole range of things.
One of the things, I'm not sure if it fits currently in Pillar 4 with thriving businesses, just some of the business support, the Gawler Business Forum that was held a couple of weeks ago. That was really well attended and interesting, I think really worthwhile. I believe there's been some good feedback from that already. So look at how council and ourselves can engage regularly with the business community in a setting like that. Is there an opportunity to add a priority like that there, or link it to
Yep.
one of these, so that we do have, say, a quarterly networking event and business forum with potential guest speakers, or showcasing businesses on these are businesses who've made transformation to become more sustainable environmentally. Here's how they did it, and things like that to showcase.
Additionally, just take businesses out of the community who are doing this best practice and inviting them to share their
Correct.
experience.
Exactly.
You don't actually have to pay for a keynote speaker.
Yeah. In fact, I
Yeah,
think you
yeah.
get better attendance
Yeah.
if it's coming to listen to your own rather than an expert being helicoptered in. I agree with you.
But even if it's ticketed too, I think that there's value in that. I think people will come if there's value, if it's not just a commercial,
Yeah.
It needs to be more than just, hey guys, talk to each other. It's got to be, we're there because we're going to learn
Well,
something.
when we were talking to Damien McGee recently about his position on the main street, we sort of said we should drop you in to come in and do a bit of a session on night economy, and he was quite happy to come in, which I think we're doing in June. Yeah. So that probably is going to be a PowerPoint presentation, but the feedback and the thinking we were going through was, you've got 3 hotels within literally a couple hundred metres of each other. You could actually develop a bit of a story with each of them where you could go from one to the other for a different experience in the same day or over a weekend, where they all specialise in different things, or it might be other activities.
Yeah,
I think
so,
all the teenagers do.
so I think
True.
how you've got your niche with the heritage and the history, and you understand and you speak to that demographic of people. I know one thing that Gawler does not do very well is stuff for the youth, and I don't mean youth groups or anything like that. I'm talking if we want to keep the spend up of the school holidays. So working with Westfields, one thing that the Westfield marketing team do really, really well is they ensure that if you're coming to there for one thing, they will hook you in with a pass for everything.
Yeah.
So they've got passes for everything. They've got a kids pass, which will get you X, Y, Z to certain shops and experiences in there. That's something that we could do to support the businesses that are already in Gawler now. For example, we've got a cinema going on right now. That was the biggest loss. That was the biggest loss to the community for any family. Working inside of Starplex, from the moment we came there,
The cinema's open.
What movies are playing?
Good. Well, that's good. You need to apply some feedback on that.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's actually because the films that are selected are just selected by an individual who lives
And
in
they're
the
not
community.
they're not first releases, and they're not weekends.
Correct,
I know,
and
but
the
that's because
operating hours.
That's because it's really expensive.
That's their
to run a
decision.
cinema.
That's their model.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
that's fine. They did,
Yeah.
it's a church. They did what they
Yeah.
do to be able to continue operating. I appreciate that, but I just think surely somewhere we can bridge that gap. We had a cafe in Lyndoch, which we purpose-built a kids' room for. It is hands down the most commented on thing that we did. So when we moved to Starplex, we worked with them to build up their holiday program, which is now, it keeps our business running because they spent a little bit of money on some inflatable things that now hundreds, and I mean hundreds of people go to every holidays, with kids that age. And then during school terms now, they will run 5 kinder gym sessions, the exact same age bracket, and they'll be booked out every single session, which then draws hundreds of people straight into our cafe.
Yeah.
Now, that was something they never did before. Like, so there's no reason why, like, you've got the roller, but I speak to a different demographic, like,
Yeah.
and you know, we've got roller skating in the rec centre. So there's something that we could have for the school holidays coming up. It could be simple, quick and easy. You could go to a couple of businesses, and that speaks to the, like, families and the youth. Then you could have something for the young adult, which, not a pub pass, because, you know, we're not promoting that, but there is a way that you could promote that in a sense to that different demographic. You could have a fitness one too, which gets you, you know, a yoga pass somewhere, a massage somewhere else, that then gets you, like, you know, a nutrition consult somewhere else. There are so many different ways that you can already activate the businesses that are already here.
Well, you know, a good example, I sort of sound like my wife, but, you know, pamper pack style things where you might get 20% off doing your toes, and then you get your hair done, and you can go and do this, that and the other.
Correct.
Where you can have an experience day.
And
Those sorts of things.
And it keeps them within Gawler.
Yep.
And I think obviously it would have to be run different. Your Westfield one's designed to be used within the same day, but you set parameters for this one, like, you know, it's valid for the 30 days of the month, and you purchase it, and the kickback is they've visited 3 to 4 local businesses.
Yeah.
All right, and then that will show, like, that could just be something as little as, we need to get on board and go and meet these businesses and door knock. Why can we not go, when we do that, with a bit of an incentive, saying, hey, with a bit of our funding, we could help, like, co-payment and offer, so that the business is not feeling like the first time we're knocking on their door saying, hey, it's like, can you give us stuff a little bit of discounted? Like, can we give you some kickback and market this for you?
Sometimes it's really simple things too. Like, unfortunately, I've really missed having that coffee shop in the corner that's closed down. Was it QTO? Anyway, there's another one coming in soon, thank goodness. But they had a loyalty card system, and I religiously collected those cards because it was $7.50 a coffee, and every 7th coffee was free. And nothing's free, of course. But you'd be surprised the number of businesses that don't have any loyalty cards whatsoever, and the atmosphere is entirely different, and you don't necessarily feel like going back.
No.
So I think it's about how you get the businesses to think about the customer and how to build that relationship.
Yeah, and I just think, like, if we're going to be door knocking and getting out there, like, could we have a bit of initiative or a bit of a plan behind it when we go there?
Maybe we should approach Pillar 4 not as we go in outreach, but we make Pillar 4 part of the regular monthly forums that we have that bring the community in.
Yeah.
And then we can create that critical mass, create that buzz. But maybe our job is to actually just pull people, try and get people to come to that.
Yeah.
So Pillar 4 can be something that we do, which is probably the best bang for buck item, is something that we do in a forum space where we try and get the business community to feel like it is brand Gawler, right? We're in this together, and there's an identity that we share together, and build that kind of, you know, best practice. And we can have people, like, you know, sharing their ideas, talking shop, which we all love doing, but we sort of bogged down in the real world in our mundane lives. Well, yeah, the mundane, right? Not the abnormal life.
No, I agree.
So maybe that could be a way, because I'm trying to think, how are we going to strategize?
How do you start it?
How do we strategize all these ideas? I mean, I'm biting my tongue. All right, you know, like, I've got, because there's no point in me talking about it. Like, I mean, I spoke to the
I want 5 to 10 ideas. I don't want 50.
I've got too many. I mean, you know, there's one idea that I always thought, this is like, I had this naive idea when I was, you know, first started my business, that I was going to change the tall poppy syndrome culture of Adelaide. And then I realised, because, you know, there's this idea that, you've probably heard of that, people who, you know, bag Adelaide have either never left or have never been. Right? And then it kind of got me thinking, well, actually, we don't need to try and win over people that have already got their mind made up. We need to win over people who haven't come yet, or attract people from outside of Adelaide to come here and to bring in new energy. And so that with that mentality, when it comes to the night economy, and realising that most of our talent comes from most of our visiting community, visiting spend comes from the regions, the northern region.
Right.
In terms of activating the nighttime economy, I think we could do a lot more outreach for trying to attract all the musicianal talent that lives regionally, and position Gawler as a big town to them, where they can, you know, flog their wares, where they can play their band.
Well, the reason
rather than trying to attract talent from the city, or try to compete with that, we should really try and see ourselves as a big brother to the region.
Well, the reason I mentioned, you know, that picture of Battle of the Bands was, you target that towards the group that the council is strong in, which is education. So you're talking about school kids, probably high school kids, college kids.
That's right.
That group, you could basically have a battle of the bands once a year, sponsored by Shane. He sells music instruments, someone like that. And I think that's a great way of creating people places where there's actually a bit of a hum, there's a bit of a rhythm, there's things going on. And I think maybe there's a role for council to think about events and, doing more on Sundays, like Sunday after lunchtime. Gee whiz. So there's opportunities to sort of do more in this town, and I think there's a role for the committee to think about that.
I think it's about inspiring publicans, really. I don't know whether it's about council doing it. I think it's about inspiring, private investment in entrepreneurs to take it, to see the potential.
Well, you've got to listen to other key businesses that do a great job throughout the week, but everyone else seems to close down. So it's about how you create that vibe and that opportunity for those businesses to want to be open.
Yeah, so for example, there's a pub in Mount Barker, Brew the Prancing Pony. It is a sought-after venue for live music when so many places in the CBD, the city, can't get live musicians or can't justify it or can't because it's quite complex in terms of licensing and things like that. But they have a really regular crowd Friday night, Saturdays, weekends, and they're booked out with musicians for months because they've got that reputation. So understanding why, and getting an understanding of, well, why aren't people coming? Why isn't this happening? Is it just like an understanding how to get started and do it? I'm not sure. Tony would be better to speak to this one specifically, probably.
Do you have staff?
Pardon?
I can staff.
You can, yeah.
Staff.
Yeah.
Sunday wages are not the same as Saturday wages.
Yeah.
True.
All right. In entertainment,
Saturday night becomes Sunday night.
husband plays in a band that plays all across the state at the Exchange frequently. Very good relationship. Works as a subby for Damo.
Very good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would any of you know how much it is to put on a live band or anything like that? It's a lot. You need, and again, I'm going to speak to return on investment.
Yeah.
This is what's stopping a lot of our current businesses right now, is because the return on investment is not there. And we've got that data with the spend map. It shows it's not there. So, and again, speaking from a business perspective, wages have gone up, cost of goods have gone up. There's a fuel levy on absolutely every single thing that you buy in right now. There has not been there has been no government initiatives. There's been no other funding. There's been no budget release.
Yeah,
There's
we're
been
in
no
a
help.
hard economic time.
Correct.
100%.
But as a consumer, we notice the prices go up.
Yeah.
But then as a business, you have to then either put your prices up, which you're going to push more customers away, or you have to absorb those costs at a loss. So hopefully that you get
cutting the less productive aspects of your business.
Yeah,
right.
100%.
Yeah.
So this is why that second rate levy and this committee and things like that, that's why we have to help with that creative marketing and also that funding that we've got, and now council's backing and understanding is building that.
How do you create the business conditions for those businesses to actually want to be open?
Which is why I said if we did move to something like Westford, just call it the Teen Pass, just for sake of the argument. If you want to go and you really want to support and say hi and get to know these businesses, you have to go there with some kind of incentive for them to jump on board, and then they will. Networking events for entrepreneurs are great. Yeah.
I spoke to the Commissioner about an idea I had. I haven't passed. I spoke to Andrew, sorry. I was today, for some reason, you're Adam, but it's Andrew. About the last train ride home being kind of sponsored by Senegal in some way. But just around that, you can build a campaign. So the last train's on us. And then I spoke to the Commissioner about how we could do that. Now, the Small Business Commissioner, they would advocate for us, but he was basically said that we need to build up basically support by the business community and visiting community. But that could be potentially a way in which you could then show, I guess, to the public community of the event spaces that, hey, we're going to try and do something here to try and support that nighttime economy by having a campaign about getting people up here and saying that the last train's home free. Because then you could always argue that you could come up here for a restaurant meal, kick off your night with, and then still head into town before shutout, and for that younger market. But it's just a way, because I just feel like it's such a waste. We have this port of entry, this train station, right, that it's just not utilised. And I think that we could try and attract more people, more reason to come up to the end of the line.
I certainly think we could do better with the buy local campaigns than we have. I think putting some banners and cloth flutes out, it's just not enough. We need to think about that relationship and what those different themed activities can be. And other places have done it well. I mean, we're not reinventing the wheel there. Just in case of, learning from the mistakes of others and being a bit sharper about how we execute.
So, yeah, again, it comes down to ideas is cheap and...
You've got 2 weeks to come up with some ideas. Is there any feedback on the ECDEV framework?
But he said, anyway, one thing he said, get the CEO... so we need data on the traffic, foot traffic of the trains.
Yeah, we got that.
You got that?
We got traffic. Not hour by hour, but we know day by day.
I kind of want to know what the amount of passengers on the last train home. Because if we can sort of...
Maybe I can get that, yeah.
Yeah, apparently we can. Apparently all Chris needs to do is write the Minister for Transport a letter.
Okay, I can put that down the list of things to do.
And then from there we can then sort of build a business case around how, well, if the train's empty anyway and you're paying the driver to go drive home, why not allow us to have this discount?
I'll give you another side of the story too, which is I was at a meeting, I think it was with the Minister when we had the thing up in the Barossa the other day. And there was feedback from the Barossa CEO about how people really struggle to go if they haven't got a vehicle. It's really hard to get a cab because there are no cabs in that area at all. At least in Gawler there are cabs. So, you could think about, whether we do something in that space, but certainly there are options in this town which don't exist in other places.
Well, that's the other thing. I mean, I honestly think we should change the name of the train line to the Barossa line, because it's then, if we are a gateway to the Barossa, then I know some people aren't but here's my reasoning for it, right?
If they're going to the Barossa, they go on the Northern Expressway. They do not come through Gawler.
Yeah, correct. But imagine if you're most people I've bumped into, most foreign tourists that I've bumped into, doing wine tours in the Barossa, and you meet an American or whatever, and they basically say, "Yeah, I flew to Barossa and visited Adelaide," right? Like it's kind of like it's obviously a huge brand name. There's a reason why people like to put Barossa in their business title. But I just sort of think that it would take a bit of humility to do that, right? Because having the name of the train line means a lot. But at the end, if what it does is it puts into the mind of potential passengers that, this line takes me to the Barossa, but I've got to stop in Gawler first. So that means I need a connective service. Maybe I'll need to get accommodation while I'm here. Maybe I'll get a coffee and something to eat while I'm here, and then I'll get a connective service to the Barossa. Just an idea.
One of the things, sometimes,
they're good.
Sometimes it's small things. I think of the lack of charging infrastructure here in terms of electric vehicles. And if you think about the charge time you require, whether it be 10, 20, half an hour, opportunity there for people to go and get a bite to eat, get their vehicle charged, and then keep on going somewhere else.
Yeah, that's got more legs to it.
But they're not hard things to do.
And this has been a big one for regional towns where the on the runs and other similar brands have been put on the bypass, so people are no longer. They've now got charging stations in the median strips, the middle of their main streets, that bring people back into their town. So it is,
That's interesting. And electric vehicles automatically will.
That demographic has a higher spend.
You'd be surprised at the number of people. I mean, I use a Tasmanian example. There are very few reasons. I'm going to upset everyone who lives in Campbelltown. There are very few reasons to stop at Campbelltown between Hobart and Launceston, other than people in Hobart freak out driving more than 100 kilometres. So they stop in Campbelltown. But the reason they stop in Campbelltown is because they've got really good toilets. You've got good toilets and you've got decent coffee shops. You can go for a stretch your legs and then go to Launceston, which is 70 k's away. So the combination of good facilities and good amenity makes a damn big difference. There was a podcast I was listening to on the weekend which was about electric vehicles and the way it changes people's journeys on weekends. It was just what you said about bypassing traffic. When you've got a vehicle, a petrol-powered vehicle that can do 750 kilometres without a stop, you basically take the freeways you never bypass into the country towns. But when you're looking at people with cars which are typically doing 300 to 400 k's and they've got to charge regularly, then the towns that were bypassed are no longer bypassed. People are stopping in them because there's facilities here to do other things. I think that's a missed opportunity at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting idea. I like the idea of us being a launch pad for Linda's Rangers Adventures. Effectively, we already have a huge RV network and whatever, and I do think we could do more in that space. Again,
Anyway,
I don't want to get bogged down in ideas. I don't know if you want to hear my voice, but like, but there's so much more. There is so much more we could tinker on. But how do we prioritise the agenda report, perhaps?
Yeah, I think it might be time to wrap up the informal discussion, if that's okay, and head back into the recommendation, and then we get the mover and seconder can speak specifically
You need a mover and a second.
to that. But yeah, we'll need to go back in. Yeah. Do we need a mover and seconder, or can we just show of hands, two-thirds majority?
Mover and
I think it's just when it's what, just
Show of hands, I think.
Show of hands. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Right. I would like to now move back into formal meeting procedures. Can I get a show of hands who support? All in support? Thank you. So thank you for that wonderful discussion, the presentation, the effort gone into the draft economic development framework by staff and other parties who've been involved. So the officer recommendation is that the Gawler Business and Economic Development Committee, 1, receive the draft Gawler Economic Development Framework 2026 to 2028 as contained in attachment 1. 2, provide any feedback on proposed actions contained in the draft Gawler Economic Development Framework 2026 to 2028 by 25th of May 2026. And 3, note that the revised draft Gawler Economic Development Framework 2026 to 2028, taking into consideration feedback received, will then be tabled with Council for its endorsement. Can I please get a mover for that? A mover?
Yeah, I'll move that.
Thank you, Alex. And a seconder?
Yep.
Thank you, Crystal. And Alex and Crystal as mover and seconder, would you like to speak to this recommendation?
No, I'm fine.
Right, thank you. Crystal?
I think we've done enough talking.
Great, thank you, Crystal. Yes.
Just through the chair, before we move to sort of wrap it up, if that's what the council or committee wants to do, I'll just flag on page 6 of 45, just for noting, the spend map subscription. So there is capacity to sign on this current financial year for next, which actually frees up the funds for next financial year, which I think is advisable, and we should just get on with it basically and do it. But I'm in your hands.
Yep. Happy with that?
That sounds good.
Yeah.
Andrew, I just also wanted to ask, sorry, before we vote on the matter, do we have an idea of when it will come to council? Are we
The
leaving
June
that?
council meeting.
Did we want to actually put that into the?
Yeah, we could if we haven't.
It seems that it's something that
Is
we
that an
normally
omission?
have.
Maybe it is. I thought the recommendation said, no, you're
No.
right, we haven't said that. Yeah, so 3 should probably be modified. Endorsement at the June council meeting for point 3.
With the support of the mover and seconder.
If there's a mover and a seconder who support that.
Yep.
Are you happy with that, Megan, as to, you got the words? So after the word endorsement, at the June ordinary council meeting.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah, that makes sense.
Any other, does anyone else wish to speak to this before we put it to a vote? No, thank you. All in favour of the motion? Thank you. All in favour. We will now move on to the next item, which is item 7. Sorry, that's the wrong one. The items listed for discussion, the first being key speakers to attend, present at the Gawler Business and Economic Development Committee future meetings. Andrew, you've alluded to there being Damien McGee coming to another future meeting. Do we have a date for that? Was that June meeting? Right, thank you. And did you want to provide any other context for this before we open the floor for discussion, staff? No? Okay. Does anyone have any other suggestions of other speakers or topics, even if you aren't aware of a speaker or a topic that might be interesting, maybe potentially based on our discussion tonight, of other things we'd like to explore and maybe be informed about to explore?
I'm just wondering aloud whether Crystal should do a presentation at some point, given her partner's in a band and she runs a successful business, that she might want to do a bit of a thinking about what she's learned in terms of how we could reach out to businesses and her vision.
I'm just wondering how I'm going to get
My-
my plane ride back from Fiji to make this 7 o'clock Monday the 15th meeting that Damo's attending. But look, I think I actually really like the idea of bringing in some key business people in the area, specifically ones that I don't like pigeonholing, but I think businesses that actually have staff that need to operate a lot of the initiatives that we want to put together. Because I think, and I noticed a lot of the people that attended the Business Engagement Forum, there are a lot of sole traders and there's a lot of individual, owner-operated businesses and stuff like that coming in. And I think that it would be really crucial that we speak to some of the larger businesses that are operating in Gawler, whether they're their business owners or like say a CEO or business manager, just because sometimes those actual like on the ground runnings and roadblocks, some people might not be aware of.
Do you want to be specific as to which sort of businesses you're thinking of, just to help us?
I think it would be good once we actually prioritise that. I think Damo would be really great to speak to hospitality, and obviously having like myself and Tony on the committee as well, that should cover a lot of that off. I think Shane speaks to like the retail and e-com and digital presence and stuff like that of Gawler. I think it would be good to, when we speak about wanting to do visual presentations for maybe like the health or the education sector, do we actually look at some people that are running some, businesses and stuff within that, I think, to get a better understanding of what's going on out there.
I would agree. I know that many of our medical facilities identify as small businesses.
Yep.
And so they have, and to that, something coming out of what you were discussing earlier, this idea of collaboration rather than competition. And because I don't know how many medical centres we've got in the town at the moment, but there's always been a degree of collaboration rather than competition there. And I think that extends to a whole range. It's a small town. The pubs, for example, all came together a number of years ago because of an incident, and that collaboration continues. But even though, in one sense, they are competing in a very tight market against each other, so
Competition starts at the bottom. Collaboration's where you're at the top. If you want to be successful in business, you collaborate.
collaboration you have to.
Yeah, and I think maybe instilling like with these coaching and mentoring programs, I think getting that messaging across. And I think, again, with this committee collaborating with the council, again, we're not in competition with each other. We've grown from that and we're now collaborating.
I think that would
so
be a really
I think
great
utilising that as like a bit of a, marketing kind of thing might be a good little, marketing point.
Well, I think it would attract sole traders who sometimes must feel quite alone in what they're trying to achieve.
They feel isolated. A sole trader will come to more and more of these business engagement and networking forums than you will see any other businesses that operate with management systems and staff, because they have the conversations that a lot of sole traders and individuals in business have it. That's why they have those networking programs. A lot of the bigger companies are having these conversations within their own organisations. But we as a committee and as a council are missing some of those conversations because, we're only hearing from a small pocket.
I'll give you an example of one you could think about. So, and maybe Bryce is more in that space where he'll know specifically, but I'm thinking about, say, the operators of Starplex or someone from Starplex, they're running an indoor pool. There is scope potentially, as we look at the Northern Parklands, for their offer to diversify and get larger, particularly if we hypothetically don't decide to convert our outdoor pool to an indoor pool and we decide to keep it as an outdoor pool as our point of difference. How we work together with other businesses in terms of, say, it's a recreation space, but it's an economic investment of infrastructure. So what are your thoughts there, Bryce?
That's a key opportunity in terms of making sure that there isn't competition in those sorts of activities that don't actually benefit from that there. But one other thing I was going to touch on earlier was in terms of having Damien come to the June meeting, there will also be a part of that conversation where we're asking Damien to put on a different hat and talk from a Gawler District Tennis Association perspective. And I think the development that has occurred there and recently opened is a really good one, because the federal government funding that we received for that wasn't a sports-funded program. It was around building better neighbourhoods. And so a key part of that actual funding application that we developed was around not only driving for a better community and a better provision of infrastructure for the community that's growing around Gawler, but it also did have a significant economic driver to that there in terms of building better infrastructure that does actually bring people to the town rather than being just providing for the town. And a key part of that facility there being in terms of increasing the number of courts to it, that it then allows to a different range of tournaments that does bring people from outside of even the region. So the tournaments that can be held there, thinking now next summer, are tournaments that are going to attract people from country Victoria, country New South Wales, because of the standard that it has. So that's another key part of that conversation.
Another one, which is a bit of a random thought, but I was just thinking about allied health services. If you look at the RSL, for example, and their thoughts about being in the Northern Parklands, one of the big gaps we've talked about before, I think, I certainly have with council, is the lack of mental health and other support services in the north. We might be okay on the more medical field-based stuff, chiro and other things, but we're certainly not so great when it comes to the mental health and other support services. So there's opportunities for this committee, for example, to be in that space too, where it wants to advocate on behalf of businesses that actually measurably improve the life of the community. And I think there's an economic value to that, but there's also clearly a community value to that more broadly. So there are different groups you could definitely target in terms of where you see, advocacy and how that works and how that investment occurs.
I think it comes back to the idea that these regular meetings need to be considered a pillar. These regular meetings need to be considered a fourth pillar initiative.
Yeah, maybe every 2 to 3 months you have a guest speaker.
And then you could, exactly, and so 1 month it could be medical services themed, and trying to, and themed around there, well, how do you improve your productivity and your performance and care for your clients and whatnot.
A good example of that, and I think Helen could remember that with the CAP meeting we had probably a couple of years ago now, when there was the proposal for the health service up at Churchill, which got approval. But it went through a fair few hiccups to get to that point. It'd be great, I think, to have a group such as this go, in terms of the sort of investment we need to make, and the sort of, given that brand we've got, we're thinking about brand and who we are, that brand is obviously clearly in that medical support services space. We're strong in that area.
Yeah.
So we should have a position and a view on that. I'm not saying there's a lot of actions we need to deliver, but certainly we could be a support for those sort of businesses. And so, yes, this is a great idea for the community, to have a position on things as opposed to be silent on things.
I just think, my only concern is monthly. I think we might see more benefit with it being quarterly.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
Every 3 months rather than every month.
Yeah.
Yeah, just because if we throw in, these meetings, the council meetings, you'd rather quality over quantity. And then that gives that sector, a good 3-quarter period. And if we do have any incentives or, say we run events that piggyback on these, quarterly decisions, you've got that time to kind of plan and deliver.
My hope would be that it would be a perpetual machine. It would run without the committee eventually. You would eventually have a cohort of the medical community, for example, who are already talking to each other and organised. And I just feel like we're kind of we need to see ourselves as more of an incubator of this momentum, and then letting it run without us eventually, because it's bigger than Ben Hur.
Well, I've got a specific one for you, Alex, and that is, given your background and what you do, and maybe it's a case of talking to Laura and other people. I'm not giving you tasks to do yet, but there are plenty of examples of councils and committees that have developed sort of portfolios of sort of 3 to 5 key videos with different messaging on different things. So there could be a little bit of homework or maybe a task here for the committee as a whole to look at what are those areas or pitch areas we want to develop some ideas on, and what's it going to cost to do it. Because I think there's definitely opportunities for us to have, an education theme one, a medical health one, maybe, first homeowners moving into the area, for example, in Gawler and Springwood and other places. There's different stories for different groups.
And my goodness, they need to be fresh and innovative.
Yeah.
And with a
If I see that current video on loop anymore with that guy playing golf and going on a glider...
You're on the record.
Or the glider.
There is one video which drives me crazy. It's the only video we've got. I'm sure it's great, but it's suffering from overuse.
I reckon
You know
that
I'm hungry to
spend-
get
that-
involved in that space,
that's-
but I'm afraid of my conflict of interest.
Spend map data was broken into, I think, maybe 4 sections where we had like health services, education, I think it was like retail encumbrance. Yeah, but there were like the 4 or 5 major ones on there. Yeah. Like I wonder if maybe we, map out the first 4 quarters based on those 4 highest, like, circling back to those priorities. We've already got that data there.
Yeah, we do.
So,
Thanks.
yeah.
Okay, thank you for those suggestions. We don't need to, do we need to develop a recommendation for that, being just an item for discussion?
No, I don't think so. We've sort of captured through the minutes and,
Yeah.
and the notes that the guys have taken. So I think
Yeah.
we've got some ideas. We can come back to you on
Yeah.
emails to confirm what we think we heard.
Yep,
Yeah.
And if
great.
you're happy with that, sort of informally, just to bounce it back to you.
Yep, that would be great.
Yeah,
Thank
look,
you.
there's going to be more opportunities anyway, so
Yeah.
this is the first one,
This is-
right?
yeah.
So, yeah.
You've got to bear in mind as well, the caretaker period is not far away. So you'll get the one in June, July, August, September. You'll be in caretaker before you get to the next one. And then November, there'll be a new council. So, but you probably don't want to be having guest speakers during caretaker period. We're not going to, is the committee going to meet during caretaker? I guess we can. Because in terms of how caretaker works, I guess, as long as the committee is not making decisions that require council to make decisions during a period where they can't really make decisions, other than administrative ones, we're fine. So I guess the committee would still run, but I'd be mindful of probably not having guest speakers during a caretaker period because the optics aren't great. But I think you could certainly have one in November, December, and then go from there.
For discussion 7.2 is regarding advocacy opportunities or considerations for the committee. And there's a note here to take into account state and federal election cycles as well. So we've had a recent state election earlier this year. That feels like a long time ago now already. But a federal election is a little while away still, 18 months or so. Is there anything the committee would like to raise? And again, it doesn't have to be the be-all, end-all list. And is there any context staff want to add to this before we maybe throw in some suggestions?
I'm just toying with the idea, and I'm in Bryce Simmons' hands, but we're still developing up something at the moment. It's a bit of a series of pitch ideas for Canberra when the Mayor and the CEO go up. Subject to the CEO being okay with us releasing it for internal conversation. I have no problem referring it to the committee so you can give us your thoughts and whether you think there's things missed or whether that, we could argue it differently. Bryce, any thoughts on that one?
And I think that's valuable in terms of getting those projects that we're obviously internally considering, getting the point of view from the committee in terms of how we're looking to push those forward. As you say, there's still 18 months to the federal election, so it is a starting point towards that there, but it also gives the committee the ideas of what sorts of projects we are already considering. They are strongly aligned to sort of community infrastructure, but looking at that as a way forward where potentially those are the projects we've got, what are the ones outside of that community infrastructure that should be considered as well.
Okay, so I'll take that on notice that I'll circulate what we've drafted so far. As I said, it's just an internal document, but I don't think there'll be any issue sharing it. I'll do that probably tomorrow.
Great, thank you. So I'll move on now to item 8, questions without notice.
I've got one, please. On my last meeting in April, there was a financial table put in which $31,000 was assigned for community events aligned with the Year of the Horse. That has caused a little bit of questioning in the community, so I'm just wondering where we're up to that. It appears to be quite a large amount of money, for which I guess we're going to do a number of different activities, but can I have an update? It can be on motion, on notice if needs be.
Happy for Bryce to answer.
Yeah, so I can provide a little bit of context relative to the three-day event. I believe that the three-day event cost approximately $3,700 in terms of what we provided there. That was down at the Equine Festival, the events that happened in Gawler, but that is also starting to look in terms of the development of some of the collateral around the History Month horsepower to steam power event. So some of these things are overlapping there. I would need to take on notice in terms of the remainder of that there.
I just think it'd be useful to be transparent.
Yeah, 100%. And that was part of the considerations in looking at the budget for 25-26 and where we have been able to establish there is that capacity to get the spend map subscription done. So there are some changing numbers in that there, but we can provide that further clarity for you.
And just for clarity, I've got no problems with spending money in that area, community events. But yeah, return on investment is we're going to be asked about, so that would be brilliant. And if we have spend map figures as well, that'll be even better. Thank you.
Any other questions without notice? No. Any motions without notice? No? Okay. I'd like to now close the meeting at 8:41. Thank you everyone for the lively discussion.
Just as a homework or housekeeping thing I should have mentioned earlier, at the June meeting I'll probably get Stacey to come along and update you all on the town centre structure plan, because by then we'll have a resolution from council to go to exhibition or consultation. And either in June or July, I'll get her to speak as well on the investment prospectus for the town centre. So you'll see her twice in 2 months probably.
I think that would be really good and really helpful to understand how economic and development and planning, strategic planning are so intertwined, and what else council can do besides promotion to enable business activity and economic activity. For those of you who may not know, economic development as a discipline originated from planners who didn't want to do planning or strategic planning, what they wanted more. Like, it's quite cross-disciplinary and quite a new field that came from a few different disciplines, and you'll get a lot of ex-planners, a lot of ex-marketers, and then generalists like me in as well, coming from economic development as well as business owners who want to contribute in a different way than owning a business privately. So it is quite an interesting area and filled with opportunity, I think.
All right, thank you. If you want, there's a hard copy, you can have that. If you haven't got one.